In an old apartment built above an ancient Egyptian tomb, a series of mysterious and terrifying events unfolds. A slaughtered child, shadows lurking behind doors, haunting cries, and ghostly apparitions that turn an entire family's life into a living nightmare. While the devout father tries to combat the darkness by reciting the Quran, even stranger phenomena begin to infiltrate their lives, extending to the army, where the eldest son faces an experience beyond comprehension. Is the house truly haunted, or does it harbor a buried secret refusing to remain hidden? Discover the full story and step into a world where logic ceases to exist. The apartment owner told me that the shadow appearing behind the door is due to the presence of a slaughtered child in the apartment, a 12-year-old boy. The child was offered as a sacrifice to the guardian jinn of the ancient Egyptian tomb located beneath the house. His soul remains trapped, crying out for release. The story begins in 1969 during the War of Attrition, when Hassan Fawzi, one of our story's protagonists, was serving as a conscript in the Egyptian army. At around 2 p.m., a news bulletin on the radio announced the martyrdom of General Abdel Monem Riyad, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces. He had been observing the enemy's developments and positioning on the front lines when he was targeted. The news struck like lightning in the ears of Mrs. Namat, Hassan's mother, as the location that had been targeted was the very same place where her son was stationed. She wept bitterly for hours, as there was no means of communication at that time to check on her son's safety. Her husband, Haj Fawzi, eventually managed to confirm that Hassan was unharmed. He reassured her, and though she calmed down somewhat, her heart remained anxious. She longed to see her son by any means possible. Hassan recounts, according to the narrator, that during the attack on the location where he was stationed, he heard a voice in his ear urging him to leave the area immediately for any reason. The voice was clear, as though someone was standing right beside him and speaking to him. He obeyed the command and moved to another spot. Moments later, the location he had just vacated was hit. Some time later, Hassan returned home on a short leave to reassure his father, mother, and younger brother, Adele. Everyone had been eagerly awaiting his arrival. His leave was for only 3 days before he had to return to the front lines. Hassan describes his family as being relatively well off. They lived in a large apartment consisting of 5 rooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a spacious living room. The apartment was inherited by his father from his grandfather, as Haj Fawzi was an only child with no siblings. Haj Fawzi owned a large butcher shop in the village of Sheben el Qam in Manufia Governorate. The first 2 days of Hassan's leave passed uneventfully. On the 3rd night, just before his return to the army, he was performing the dawn prayer when he noticed a shadow of someone leaning with their hands on the apartment door. The shadow was so distinct that anyone could see it clearly. Strangely, however, the figure neither knocked nor moved. It remained completely still. This was both unsettling and frightening for him. Hassan slowly approached the door and began to open it to see who was standing there. To his surprise, he was met with complete silence and found no one outside, nor anything to cause alarm. Bewildered, he asked himself, what was that shadow behind the door? He tried to put the matter out of his mind and focus on his duties at the army. Hassan also shared that he couldn't stop wondering, what was that voice that urged me to leave the area? It couldn't have been a hallucination, especially since the attack on General Abdel Monem Riyad occurred only moments after he left. As time went on, strange occurrences began to plague the family at home. Haj Fawzi, the apartment's owner, reported that after Hassan left and returned to the front lines, all the family members started hearing the continuous sound of a child crying. The crying was heart-wrenching, as if the child was being tortured. The source of the sound was unclear, so they would ask their neighbors if they had any children crying in their homes. The neighbors consistently denied hearing anything and confirmed that no children in their homes cried in the way described. Mrs. Namat, on the other hand, said that she frequently saw the shadow of someone standing at the apartment door. Since doors from that era were often made with glass panels framed by iron bars, it was easy to see if someone was standing outside. She would rush to the door to check, only to find no one there. She added that every time she saw the shadow, her heart told her it was her son, Hassan, standing there. Hassan's younger brother, Adel, witnessed something even stranger. Adel recounted that one day, while he was studying with his book in hand, he saw a small child pass in front of him. The child appeared entirely human, smiled at him, and then vanished into thin air. Adel, who was around 18 years old at the time, was so terrified and shocked that he fainted. Worse yet, after the incident, he suffered a nervous breakdown that left him unable to speak. Doctors were unable to diagnose his condition, as there was no physical cause to explain what had happened to him. The family's ordeal with these strange events continued and began to escalate over time, spreading fear among all its members. This led Mrs. Namat to declare that the apartment was haunted and inhabited by spirits. She insisted that Haj Fawzi seek out someone capable of investigating the matter and uncovering what was happening in the house. Haj Fawzi, a devoutly religious man, did not believe in such superstitions. He was confident that reciting the Quran and remembering God would dispel any evil or harm in the apartment. Yet what he later recounted in his stories was unusual. He would frequently recite Surat al-Baqarah aloud in the house, but during the recitation he would feel an overwhelming sense of suffocation and a strange headache. It got to the point where he became afraid to recite it. Even stranger, over time, he began experiencing the same headache during prayer, which gradually caused him to distance himself from it. This phenomenon wasn't limited to him alone, but affected all the family members in the house. What happened to Hassan in the army, however, was far more terrifying than what his family experienced at home. To be continued.